All right, well, we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. Stephanie, why don't we go ahead and do a roll call?
Commissioner Bach?
Here.
Buttons won't work. Okay, Commissioner Byers?
Here.
Commissioner Hall?
Here.
Commissioner Michelina?
Here.
Commissioner Rigsby?
Here.
Commissioner Williams?
Vicki, are you there?
Here.
Also present is Samantha, Stephanie, and Christy for the Planning and Zoning Department, and Zach Cook. You do have an.
Excellent. At this time, if there's any, there shouldn't be, but if there's any conflicts of interest, now would be the time to declare them.
I have none.
Seeing none, hearing none, we'll move to the certification of compliance with Resolution 2023-01. Stephanie?
I do certify that the meeting was posted in accordance with Resolution 23-01 and with compliance of Section 5440 of the Municipal Code.
Excellent. All right, let's move to bullet 3, approval of the agenda today. Any additions to the agenda?
I move that we approve the agenda. Second.
My second.
Got a motion and a second. We'll go ahead and do a vote, I guess.
Commissioner Bach?
I'll abstain due to the fact I was not present.
Sorry, we're doing agenda approval.
Oh, sorry. Moving ahead.
Almost there.
Nearly there, yep.
I'm trying to speed this up.
Commissioner Byers?
Aye.
Commissioner Hall?
Aye.
Commissioner Michelina?
Aye.
Commissioner Rigsby?
Aye.
Commissioner Williams?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Great, we have an approved agenda. Now we'll get into the meeting minutes. I was not present at the meeting last week, so I do have a point of clarification. Do I still sign, even though I was not the chairman of that meeting? Wouldn't it be my vice chairman that would sign? Okay. All right. Sounds good. That was the only comment that I had. Any additions or changes to the meeting minutes?
Yeah, I have one in the petition, the rezone case RZ 2023-251.
That is on the second page.
Yeah, that was on, well, I guess it's page 3 of 39. Yeah. The only thing I noticed there was I did question the applicant about whether there was a pending contract on that property, and that question was not answered directly, and it's not reflected in the meeting of the minutes.
A contract to be sold?
Yes. That was when they gave that very long, wordy, walk-around answer to a yes or no question.
Okay, so we'll need to get that added.
Let me try and send it. Okay.
Any other changes to the meeting minutes?
That was the only one I had.
Okay. If no other changes, I would entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes as amended by Commissioner Hall.
I make a motion to approve the minutes. Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes, just to clarify, as updated.
As updated.
Yeah. Motion and a second. Stephanie, why don't we go to roll call vote?
Commissioner Bach?
As previously stated.
Commissioner Byers?
Aye.
Commissioner Hall?
Aye.
Commissioner Michelina?
Aye.
Commissioner Rigsby?
I will abstain as well, since I was not present.
Commissioner Williams?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Great.
Is Carlos doesn't have the meeting ID for Zoom, can you send it to me?
Okay, while Stephanie's working on that, I'm gonna go ahead and open it to public input. don't believe we have anybody on the Zoom or anybody present. So seeing that there's nobody here to provide public input, I'll go ahead and close public input. Now we'll move to bullet point 6, the public hearing, continuation of ordinance amendments to Chapter 54, Land Use, Division 4, zoning districts. I think we'll need Carlos and the folks at Site Southwest on to continue, so we'll pause until we can get them on. And then while Stephanie's working on that, Samantha, the second set of documents that were sent to us, one is this kind of general intentions and an overview of what has been changed. And then the second document is the tracked changes, so the specific changes by section, correct?
Yes.
And from what I understand, the last time we met, we tabled this, so there was no updates, but is it the goal of today to go through the entire Article 2?
Yes, and we'll have to review it and have changes, that'll make it quicker, but hopefully we can get through all of it.
Okay.
Questions?
Not surprised. Give them another minute.
It's probably mostly,
Are there questions that you have for the folks that drafted this on behalf of the village, or could the village folks answer it?
it could be either way. It's basically, I went through the 45 pages here, and I've got things kind of highlighted where I had questions of either why or what the reasoning was on some of the stuff.
Okay,
So
I mean, I do as well.
okay. Well, it looks like,
Before these changes, just some background, we did have a steering committee that was put together, and they met probably like 6 times, and that's how we got to this point. It's not necessarily staff's opinion,
okay,
from the steering committee.
okay. Well, I mean, that's, like I said, that's why I went through it. I've got questions, and they're either,
Yeah, if there's something that you feel doesn't make sense, then we should definitely take a look.
there's definitely something in the very last section in annexation that doesn't make sense, but.
well, good deal. It looks like we have Carlos on, so we can
Get moving.
get moving on it.
Hi, y'all.
Hey, Carlos. Welcome.
Thanks for being patient. I thought I had the Zoom link via Outlook, but we've got some of the new security measures for that, so I didn't actually have that.
No problem. We're just getting everybody up to date on the documents
good.
that were provided. I know that the goal is to try to get through all 45 pages by today. And so I was wondering if you had any suggestions or ideas on the best possible path forward. We did review the documents before, ahead of time.
Great. Yeah, let me start sharing my screen. I want to show you first. I want to show you first some of the how things are kind of going to be displayed eventually. So we will have some of these sheets that will make it a little bit more clear. So I just want to kind of put that out at the beginning. That's going to be something that once we get more certainty about how all the different processes will work, we'll start moving towards something like this and make it a little bit more visually understandable. So that's something that we will do. These are a little bit old, so I'm not sure if they're still accurate. But like for the variance, for instance, you apply, you go to the public hearing, it's either approved and you get an agreement, or it's denied, and then here's the different steps that can happen there. So I just wanted to be clear about that in the beginning. That's what the format will look like. Any questions about any of that format stuff that will happen?
So that'll be in the code?
That will be in the code, correct? Right. So the code right now is very visual. It's a very text-based document.
Yeah.
What we'd have is in the procedures, we'd also have kind of associated with some of these procedures, we'd have a way that kind of shows what that is in a visual perspective as well.
Great, thanks.
So I think the easiest thing probably to go through is looking at the latest red lines that I sent. Those red lines, I try to provide some comments over here just to make it a little bit more understandable what things were kind of changing or why new things were there. So for example, page 1, I was talking about how we created this new table to summarize and kind of put all the procedures in one place. Not really a substantive change there, although we can start talking about, how some of the different stuff work. I think so just trying to kind of provide an overall table where you can see a lot of the different processes and procedures and how those kind of move forward. It might work well. I could probably just run through some of these more non-substantive comments pretty quickly. And maybe it would be best to start running through some of these. If we have comments or questions, maybe we could just put those aside and we could kind of put those into a parking lot and then we could go through those after we run through the comments. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Why don't we just hit them while we're?
why don't we do, yeah.
We can,
I've
sure,
got it
sure.
laid out by each page and section to go through where I've
Sure.
got questions.
Yeah, why don't we just run, like, the first 3 pages, I don't know if there's any feedback or questions, I'm speaking on behalf of the commission here, but, so why don't we just run through it and talk through
Sure.
it? And then we'll speak
Sure.
up, because we might lose track of the questions if we
Yeah,
wait till the end.
Yeah, that makes sense.
'Cause like I said, my first questions are on page 9.
Okay.
Um,
Sounds
Mr.
good.
Chairman, on page 1, I just need a definition that I couldn't seem to get hold of, and that is what a subdivision minor versus a subdivision major is. Can you,
Are you talking in the table on page 1?
Yeah.
Yeah, in the table, and it might make sense to actually describe it here. Let me just put a note in for that. Usually with a subdivision minor, that's usually for simple subdivisions, so splitting a lot. And then I think the state definition, I haven't looked at the subdivisions for Ruidoso, but Phyllis, isn't it usually less than, I think it might be less than 4, less than 3, less than 5, something kind of like that. At some point in time, it becomes a subdivision minor. And the state and usually municipalities or counties have different regulations for those processes. They're usually somewhat administrative, whereas the larger subdivisions, the subdivision majors, actually go through more involved processes.
That's right,
Yeah,
Carlos.
there's
Ours
a
is
definition later on in the code, and I think we can just put a link to it so
Right.
that you just click on it and it takes you to it. But the subdivision minor would just have to do with, it would be like lot splits or not very many lots, no new infrastructure required. There's a list of things that criteria it has to meet before it's minor. And then it still goes through a review process, but you don't have as much required for it. Just because there isn't any infrastructure required, and it's a much simpler process.
Thank you. Commissioner Williams, does
Is
that
it-
answer your question?
I believe so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on the first few pages? Again, we've got this table here, and then kind of a list of some of the administrative review and decision processes, the processes that require a public hearing, again, the submission requirements. And again, the submission requirements were kind of consolidated, different places. We're kind of talking about them in different ways. We kind of just consolidated those, took a lot of the details out of the code. That should be something, more of a staff and policy decision. A substantive change we did make, page 3, we talked about this last time, was removing fees. So I'm not sure if we need to talk about that more, but that was kind of the substantive change.
No, I don't think so, because we talked about that being
Okay.
able to be managed by staff.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's continue then. So let's take the next couple pages. Page 4, withdrawals of applications. Again, not too much of a substantive change. We did kind of create one standard, and so the standard, or no, with the for withdrawals, you could basically withdraw it whenever, and you don't get your fees back. So there's not too much change with that. The public hearing section, that subsection there, a lot of red lines, but not really any substantive changes. That's page 4 and 5. Page 5 is also the Planning Commission hearing procedures. The reconsideration of applications, that moves to another section. The review packet kind of just summarizing what that stuff is, so nothing really substantive in there. Skipping down through page 6. Again, some red lines, but not a lot of substance there. Anybody have any questions on some of that 4, 5, and 6?
I'm not seeing any.
What we're thinking?
Let's go to 7.
Okay. Cool. So page 7, we start to get into some more changes. If you look at the appeals section, so again, the appeals, it was saying that it was appealed to village council. Presumably appeal to the planning commission would follow the same process. So we just made that so. We made it so that the appeals process would do planning commission or village council. Again, we talked about this a little bit the last meeting. We do need to have some kind of process for planning commission appeals. What we did here was we tried to revise some of the applicability. What's an applicable appeal based on some of the state statute? I've got a citation in there, 3-21-8. So we try to use some of the state guidance on what is an actual valid appeal. Something that Village of Ruidoso does is it also has what you're calling an appeal for sign permit applications. That doesn't fit the definition of state statute kind of for appeal, but that's still how Village of Ruidoso is treating it. So no change to that. So not a lot of substance in here. But if anyone was kind of concerned with some of the applicability or how appeals work, I could talk about that. If we continue on, the determination of appeal validity and notice, this is on page 8. This is a new review step. So what this would do is it would make it where if somebody wanted to submit an appeal, they can't submit an appeal because they think the code should be changed. That's not a formal appeal. If they disagreed with how the regulation works, that wouldn't be an appeal. So a lot of people try to go through the appeal process for that. So this just provides a step where the planning administrator or the village attorney would be able to review the application and see, is this actually an appeal of a staff or a planning commission decision? Or is this a whole different kind of legislative debate, right? If it's an actual appeal, we'll let it go through the appeal process. And if it's not, it's going to be rejected as invalid. It's not denied. It's just not a valid appeal. So once it becomes a valid appeal, then it would actually go through more of that appeal process and be heard as an appeal. So that's new, but I don't think there's a lot of substantive debate about that. I could be wrong. But that's how that kind of process works.
I guess the only question would be is if the staff determines it's an invalid appeal, what's the potential applicant's other, what's their other route? Do they have to take it to court, or how does that work in New Mexico?
Yeah, so if they thought that the law was, a constitutional was abridging their constitutional rights or something like that, yeah, that would be appeal to court of the fundamental aspect of the law. If the applicant wanted to change the law or the application of the law, then that would be a code amendment. That would be a zoning amendment. That would be some other kind of change like that.
Okay.
Maybe it would be a conditional use permit or a variance or something else like that. But it wouldn't actually be an appeal process.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
So scheduling, noticing, again, a lot of red lines we've kind of written for some of these things. I don't think there's any real substantive changes with how appeals work. once they kind of get filtered through that validity process. So I'm skipping through 9.
What, did you
Yeah.
get your question on
Uh-huh.
page 9?
Please.
No, it's actually on page 10.
Okay.
Okay.
I think
Well,
we
yeah,
can-
looking at page 10, right, we've got the different review processes and how those processes are reviewed. And then I guess before we get to reconsideration of application, any questions with the appeal process?
No, none here.
And if not, let's go down to reconsideration of application.
Well, no, I've got,
what this
my
did was-
questions are further up. Before you get to that,
Okay.
in
Let's
section,
talk
I
about
guess
this.
it's section 9A,
Uh-huh.
and we redlined out 15, his agent or attorney. Why is that redlined out? Because you got testimony from the applicant, and applicant.
I think
could
that's
be-
part of other interested parties, I figured. I think that's what that was.
Because an applicant could be represented by an attorney, and not
Absolutely.
necessarily
Yeah.
the applicant. So that was my question, why was that redlined out? And then my only, in that whole other section in 9 and A through D, changed the wording from council to reviewing body. Why is that changed to reviewing body? Because that's the only place I see that in this document.
We could be a reviewing body. I think that's the
Right.
purpose, is that the commission can, the Planning and Zoning Commission can now review.
Oh, okay,
appeals.
so that goes back up to the first, or village council. But yeah, I guess the other thing is why would you take out agent or an attorney? Because I've been on the other side of these things in the privateness, and oftentimes you have an attorney representing you. So I don't think you, no,
Yeah, if you think we should keep it in there, I didn't think it was substantive to keep that in there or remove it. We could absolutely just keep that in there. I'm just going to make a note directly on this document. Do other people agree with that? Do we want to keep that in there?
I do,
Okay.
because I think that's how a lot of people are gonna present their case,
Yeah,
so.
totally fine.
Leave it in.
Yeah.
okay, I understand that.
All right. So reconsideration of applications. We talked about this a little bit last time too. Commissioner Williams? Commissioner, you're muted.
I did do that on purpose. I have seen through this so far several modifiers such as substantially completed, or what was another one I saw that is, it's like, okay, what does substantially mean? What does, what was the other
And
one? Anyway, you get my idea.
are you talking
The other
about in the
thing I-
comments, Vicky, or are you talking about in the actual language?
I'm
being
talking
changed?
about in this particular paragraph, it's repeated, I believe, where it says
We've got this.
substantially completed.
Right.
and Then we changed from 2 to 3 years, and I'd like to talk about that too with everybody and see what they think.
I see. Yeah, the length of time.
But
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
exactly does that mean, substantially completed? Do we have a definition of that somewhere? Or where it's laid out so we can feel comfortable with, not having any form of bias in it, so we know what it really means?
I would first ask staff, because I believe some of the substantial stuff is already in there. I think this can be an interpretation of staff. Usually staff will come up with some kind of thing that kind of says, whether something is or is not substantial, not necessarily in code, but more of a policy document or a common practice that they're following. If that's not clear, or if staff need more clarification, or if it's not other places in the code, then I agree. I think we should probably add something to that. But yeah, let's start and see if staff has a comment or thoughts about that.
Sam, Stephanie, any comments?
Yeah, in the past, it's just been left up to the discretion of staff. And this part of it, I think that, I mean, reconsideration, that's gonna come down to the staff or the governing body, so it kind of should be clarified just a little bit more, I guess.
Sure. So for reconsideration, if somebody is changing, for instance, if they're changing, I don't know, if they want to do a single family home, but they're going to be, the hard part is, if they're, let's say that they came through with a subdivision and now they want to change the number of units within the subdivision, at what point in time is that, or is that not substantial? I think,
Yeah. I mean, I'd want to delineate it just to protect myself if I were staff, so that somebody.
Yeah, I mean, substantially
Other-
could be interpreted as the same property with the same request, right? Even if the number changes, so if they're asking for a variance to the existing code on 101 Main Street, and they want 3 parking lots instead of 4 parking spots, I mean, I would consider that,
Do you like
anytime it's the
similar,
same property.
similar in nature
Yeah,
instead of substantially?
yeah.
If an application is similar in nature to the one that had been rejected?
Would that help clarify it in your mind, Vicky?
I'm I'm fine with it. I don't have to, I don't have to deal with that decision. So, as long as staff's comfortable with it, I get it.
but yeah, there was a residential subdivision. Let's say they wanted to do 10 units and now they're asking for 5. Say, well, they're asking for half as much as what they were before. So that to me seems substantially different.
Well, to you, but maybe not.
Right, but maybe
I
not to
guess-
somebody else.
And here's
Yeah.
another one, just below there, under amendments and minor deviations, under D. It says, and relevant detrimental effects to surrounding property owners, residents, or village. Who determines if there is a relevant detrimental effect? Where's that lined out?
Yeah, that again, both
I'm
of those.
sorry, and I don't
instances
mean to be nitpicky, but we're trying to correct this once and for all, so there's not a bunch of questions when you come to a decision.
I don't know about once and for all. I think there's, yeah, but I do understand, I think it's pretty valid. If there is deviations or amendments, right now it's up to the staff, it looks like with this language.
I guess the only.
Well, or maybe Zach could even give some input on it.
Zach left us.
I've seen codes where the amount of deviation is defined. Like a change of no more than X% or something like that. So it is possible to define that if it's quantitative.
But do we pick an arbitrary number
Right.
for that, or, do we have other city codes that we can look at and see possibly what somebody else has done, or?
Well, yeah, and I think, instances where you can't quantify it, if they move, when they come to the planning part and they change the location of a driveway by 5 feet because there's a giant tree there, that shouldn't have to come back to this board and the planning department.
Should be able to make that
Yeah,
decision.
Yeah.
move it
Right.
5 feet the other way and it's not a detrimental impact to the conditional use of that property or to the variance or et cetera.
I guess
Right.
the only question in this section I had in the expiration due to timeliness, why did it go from 2 years to 3 years?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that
Anybody
doesn't-
ever had somebody building across the street from them?
Yeah, I have, and
Oh, my God.
I've seen it. It's just, I don't understand the logic of going from 2 years to 3 years. Somebody needs to explain that to me.
Me too.
Yeah, what we were thinking for this was that even once you get some of those permits or some of those approvals, there might still be a lot more things that you have to do to kind of get all of your ducks in a row, whether that's different kinds of terrain issues, utility issues, ownership issues, engineering issues, things like that. Especially sometimes with getting contractors or getting material, those have also put big delays in projects sometimes. So we were advising moving from 2 to 3, but that's up for debate.
Yeah, no, I'm not buying that because all the issues you mentioned, like with contractors and permits and all that sort of stuff, you have to have all that in line before you get a building permit. Once you get to that point of getting a building permit, it's just your materials and your contractors, and if you can't be substantially completed or completed within 2 years, well, you don't need to be in the contracting business, in my opinion.
And just to let you know, this language does exist currently, but in the case studies that you guys have, you usually have already put a more restringent. That's just a baseline down there, it's not necessarily what has to be done. You guys have to.
2 years. Yeah, well,
You've made substantial progress.
and I understand that, but I think it'd just be better to leave it what it was originally as 2 rather than 3. That just opens the door to, no, we don't necessarily have to, if you're gonna do a project, you better be serious about it, so.
And even at 2, the commission.
Has the-
extend it.
That was my other point, was, you got the ability to extend it by, in 1-year extension if needed.
Up to 3, so it gives it 5, which is a nice round, or not
And-
round number, but 5 years you should be able to complete a project.
And I think it prods the builder along a little too. If you give them 3 years, I mean,
And
we're gonna see a bunch of projects started that.
substantially
Yeah, just run.
completed, I think, is the key there. I mean, the car wash ran into unforeseen circumstances down there on Sudworth, and it took them 2 years to make substantial progress, but it was
Yeah.
a known issue. So I think the 2 years is,
I'd leave it at 2.
I'm in agreement with that. Anybody opposed to leaving it at 2?
I prefer it to whenever we go out to 3, it just makes it really unmanageable. And if we have turnover, we'll lose track of projects and that's not good.
Right.
Sounds good.
Great, thanks, Carlos.
Can do. With the reconsideration of application and amendments and minor deviation, staff, do you want to, should we just try to work separately on that and get some more clarification on something that kind of creates some boundaries there? Does that work? Should we try to get more guidance from the planning commission? I'm wondering how we should take those next steps.
I'm comfortable with enforcing this part of the code, but if you all have something that'll clarify it and take out the judgment call from the planning administrator, I'm fine with that as well.
I'm inclined to leave
Yeah.
the language, just because I don't want, if we handcuff, not you, but whoever then becomes planning officer in the future, if we handcuff them, then we'd hear every single change. Yeah, and it would slow things down considerably. So I think it's appropriate. I mean, to Vicky's point and some of the other commissioners, maybe it makes sense to have some examples. But we could also leave it in and then see what comes our way and make changes as needed.
Yeah, because of the nature of the projects, they vary all over the map. It's kind of hard to put them into generic categories, like if it was only just like site grading, that would be easy, but that may only be one portion of a project. But, that's something where when you start trying to do percentage of, to final grade or something like that, not every project has that. So I think that's where I think you need to give the staff leeway, and certainly, if you have procedures in place where, heck, take a digital photograph if you have to every month of something of a site, and, you show 12 months of nothing happening on a site. I think that gives you everything you need to do from a staff
Yeah.
perspective to do that. That's easy enough to do, and I don't think we need to try to quantify it in a,
Yeah,
100% defined, because we can't think of every circumstance.
I would agree.
Yeah.
So I think it's
Well-
okay as is, Carlos.
Okay,
We can
sounds good.
probably move on to page 12.
Sounds good. And just for that, I have seen jurisdictions that create little, policy or interpretation guidelines on that. The staff might sometimes say, hey, this is how we're kind of interpreting some of this based on some of this guidance right now. All of that may change. That's not in the code. That's just, a policy administrative document that still gives staff some flexibility there.
Okay.
All right. So moving down, page 12. So we kind of consolidated some of the enforcement section, enforcement and penalties. Not a lot of substantive changes here. We did add this private covenant will not be enforced by the village. That was something that staff wanted to add on there just because they're not enforceable. They just wanted to make that clear. I don't think there's much other substantive changes here.
Sorry, is there maybe we don't need to put it in here, but like, private covenants shall not be enforced by the village. I mean, they can't enforce them, right? Like,
Their private property agreement, that falls back on the property owner to.
right, and the subdivision, and there has to be so I don't know if there's stronger language than shall not. It's like they can't. It's a private agreement.
That shall.
Okay.
Means definite, and then may means like can and cannot, but.
Shot.
Code shall.
Fair enough.
That's
Fair enough.
That's the correct language.
All right, so we'll keep that. No comments there.
No.
Moving on. Page 13, getting into some of the penalties. Kind of don't have a lot of changes here. And then this violations and penalties, this was just kind of worked into the previous section. So I don't think there's any substantive changes in that.
Sounds good.
Before we get to administrative, any other questions on that first section?
No.
General procedures? Okay. So again, I just want to remind us, general procedures is laying out, the general process that things are going. It has the fees. So this is where, we get rid of a lot of the fee stuff in other parts of the code. We get rid of some of the withdrawals in other parts of the code. We get rid of how public hearings have to be complied with, right? There's a standard way that public hearings work. And so we're getting rid of some of that stuff, reducing some of the redundancy, getting rid of, and then some of the appeals, and then the rehearing kinds of cases. So that's stuff that we got rid of a lot of other sections of the code if it just applies with a standard procedure.
Yeah,
So
that
let's
sounds
get
good.
into
Carlos,
Yeah.
before we get into administrative, should we just vote on that section? So that way we can knock stuff off if we have to adjourn, yeah. So if there are no other changes outside of the ones that we suggested to Carlos, I would entertain a motion to approve the general procedures, section 54-39 that we just went through.
I make a motion to approve section 54-39 as so discussed with the changes.
Thank you, sir.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Let's do a quick roll call.
Who seconded?
That was Commissioner Hall. Approving just the general procedures that we went through with the changes described.
Yeah, section 54-39.
Just in case we get hacked and we have to adjourn.
Yeah, you never know.
Commissioner Black?
Aye.
Commissioner Byers?
Aye.
Commissioner Hall?
Aye.
Commissioner McElina?
Aye.
Commissioner Rainey?
Aye.
Commissioner Williams?
Did you say yes, Vicky?
I can't hear them, and I don't know why it's not coming across.
Okay. Stepping out, is your
I
mic
can
on?
hear you, but I can't hear the girl, Stephanie or Sam.
All right, thank you.
I
Thank you.
think Stephanie's microphone may not be on.
Is that it?
Yeah, it says it's on.
I couldn't hear her either.
Thank you.
Uh-oh,
Can you hear me now?
Can you, no,
bad omen.
okay. We'll let Stephanie work on that, and we'll continue on with the administrative section, 54-40.
Sounds good. So 54-40, this is page 14. Lots of red lines to this, and I don't think any of them should be too substantive. Generally, we kind of just reference this first section A, that there's a lot of other administrative processes in module 4. I think there's some also in different parts of the code. We already had some of those listed in that first table, but we just want to make it clear that all of those still go through administrative processes, including and not limiting to, and then list off what some of those are. That's the first one. The second part of this section is the certificate of zoning compliance. So previously there was a certificate of zoning compliance and application for zoning permit. Discussing with staff, we decided we didn't really need those to be separate, and we didn't need all of these other details associated with those. It's actually a pretty simple process. First part, it can be issued when you apply for a business registration. The second part, it's just confirming that the requested use is permitted, a conditional use, legally non-conforming or not permitted. And so that's kind of able to get rid of a lot of pages there. That is a lot of stuff that we've cut out from the code. If staff or commissioners have any questions about that, we could talk about that, but that's that section.
I guess the only question is, I understand now that for the zoning compliance, but what's the difference between a certificate of zoning and a zoning permit?
And that's where what we did was we just made them the same thing.
And where we have procedures that are kind of defined on the paperwork that you pick up at the, from the permit desk, those we felt like didn't need to be repeated in the ordinance, that those forms would get approved separately and not require an ordinance change. So that's things like how many copies you need and what scale you need, and things that are really not, they're what kind of submittals you have to provide. It's not really processed so much.
Okay,
So you'll see that throughout,
okay, so
that those kind of specifics are deleted unless they have some relevance to that process itself.
okay, so I guess the question I have then is, all of this is detailed online. The stuff that was moved out, even though it's an administrative thing, is that going to be available online to the public as, hey, if I need a zoning compliance or this is the stuff I need, is that link or stuff going to be listed online? Because
It's
now
part of the application forms.
well, what I'm getting to is the language is being removed here, is it going to be available online to the public somewhere else so they can understand all of the process from that perspective? I mean, that's the only concern I would have, is that right now it's in this document, whether it was appended to an end of it or not, you're getting good information here, and what I don't want to see is good information go away where it can't be easily accessed online, because that's typically the challenge I've seen in other areas where I've lived, where, I can't find this information online.
Right.
This is very thorough, and I understand the need to want to try to do it, but I also understand that we don't want to get rid of language, so people need to be able to find it online, whether it's a link in the document or something, so that they can have the information. I understand in the code.
I think,
See what I'm getting at there?
I think so. I think it would be available upon request, or we could put it online.
All of our codes are published online.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. In the code, this is going out of the code, so where does this language go?
The code that
Right.
you can view online would be replaced with the code that would be, passed and adopted.
Well, I'm talking the red line stuff here, like section.
Section 4 and 5 and
It would go
I and
to,
all of that stuff.
application, yeah. It would
Yeah,
just go
yeah,
to the
Commissioner,
form.
I think is kind of in reference. So the stuff, this is like one copy of this plan shall be returned to the applicant by the planning administrator. You've got to show the exact size of the structures to be retained or which are going to be demolished. All of that stuff is going to become a publicly accessible application submission document. So when somebody says, "Hey, I want a certificate of zoning compliance," it's going to say right on there, we want plans in triplicate, or maybe we want plans, maybe we only want one version, right?
Okay.
Maybe we want them digital. Maybe they could be either. They need to be drawn to scale. Needs to, show X, Y, and Z, and all these different things. And this is how we want it to work.
Okay.
So all that stuff is kind of, I don't want to say cut and paste, but I would say cut from here, and then in the applications and submission packet,
It goes
it's going
to
to
there,
say,
okay.
this is what we do want. Yeah.
Okay. All right, as long as it's not gone and it's accessible, that's the,
Yeah.
that's the key, is you want to be able to,
Yeah.
hey, if I need to get an application, do it, I can talk to Stephanie or Samantha, but then the information's there. That's what I don't want
Correct.
to lose, is, that ability to search that online, because you'd be surprised how hard that is in other parts of the country.
Yeah, fair.
Correct.
Let's move to 16. I think that's probably page 16. That's probably the next area where there's substantial changes.
Yeah. So
rezoning.
now we're moving into the zone map amendments, fancy way of saying rezoning. So we described the purpose here, not a lot of change in the purpose substantively, just a lot of text changes. Rezoning applications, how the person applies for the rezoning, not substantive there. The criteria for the decision is new. So we created new zoning criteria. A lot of this rezoning criteria is based off of established best practices that other jurisdictions are doing, based off of state statute, and also based off of things that are in RUDOSA code existing. Take a look at some of this criteria, though. If it does seem problematic, this is when we'd want to address this, but this is trying to kind of say, if someone's coming in for a zone map amendment, the planning commission and city council are going to be village council are going to be evaluating these different things. Pretty standard to have the zoning district being inappropriate for one of three reasons: either established in error, some kind of mistake, changes in surrounding conditions, or different zoning is more advantageous to the community. That's kind of state statute there. Also, pretty similar to state statute, it's just that it can't result in spot zoning. And then whether necessary infrastructure and public services can be feasibly provided to the property. That's something that's common to kind of add in there, just figuring out whether it even works.
And the reason that we've added, if they didn't already exist, there are criteria for decision now in each process, which gives you sort of defines what it is you are looking for in an application. And that wasn't always the case before. Sometimes it was and sometimes it wasn't.
Yeah, thank you. Any comments by the commission? I think that makes sense to outline it.
Yeah, no, I think it does.
Okay.
Okay. So moving down the process, not a lot of changes with the process. I don't believe there's substantive changes to the process. Removed stuff around submission timing. I don't think that's necessary or useful. With a lot of these, we actually added this new process, administrative review and staff recommendation. That's a normal thing that's happening. Staff take an application, they write up a staff report, they make a recommendation to the deciding body. Not substantive, but that is new language. Going down to page 17.
Can I just go back? I think
Absolutely.
that the timing of applications, to make sure that there's time for review before it goes to the reviewing body, that's another thing that would be on the application form and information given to the applicant when they come in.
Yeah.
I mean, that's already the case, that they can't just come in the morning of the hearing and expect to be heard. So
Right.
Yeah.
It's
And-
tied back to notification requirements and review time needed and things, so.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah, because the staff goes through stuff and goes through they evaluate it and give us an opinion on it. So that needs to have time to happen, so.
So that'll be part of the administrative, that'll be part of the application package.
Okay. That makes sense.
And then on 19, just kind of jumping ahead by the look of it.
Well, wait a minute, I got a question on 17.
Oh, I skipped way ahead, sorry.
You're just jumping.
All right, 17, sorry.
Just a clarification on, it was redlined out. It was old item 8 about protest. If there's a written.
Yes. Yep.
That's on 19, so they're all actually
Oh,
tied
They
together.
are tied together? Oh, they
Yes.
are tied together. Well,
Yeah,
maybe,
yeah.
how did I miss that on 19?
So 19 is actually a whole new process. So let's
Okay.
just get to the
Okay.
16, 17. 16, 17 is just the rezoning process. But yeah, a lot of I think maybe it's just these two. But there's this thing about protest. So if the village council approves something with the majority approval, you could have a protest where some of the surrounding owners can oppose that and come back in, and it would need a majority vote from members of the council. It already received a majority vote from members of the council. So we and staff didn't think this was actually a useful process to include. There's also, I at least have a question. There could be some problems with some due process, probably not, but there could be. I at least have a question for the village attorney about if we wanted to include that, whether that would be a problem with some of the due process consideration. But either way, we generally got rid of it because we and staff did not think that it was useful to have a kind of reconsideration process that kind of applies the same standard.
And I think we talked about this at one meeting, where we said the village council is representative of the people, and if they vote to approve something,
Yeah. Their next step is
legal.
Yeah.
They can go to district court.
District court,
Right.
sorry.
Right.
And that's in here.
But
Right,
yeah, what this would be saying is it's saying, if a majority of the village council that represents the people, if they vote on a majority line, then 20% of the owners within the area can bring it back to the village council, and then the village council would have to have an affirmative vote of a majority of their members. Well, they already approved it by a majority of their members. So, it gives an opportunity for reconsideration, but I'm not sure if that's actually helpful.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
And Commissioner Williams has her hand up, by the way.
you're on mute, Vicky.
Good. Okay, I was wondering, crud, now I lost the reading on here under protests, where it's on page 17 of 45, I read that to mean what we have as people sending in a letter to address a certain item on our agenda, or being present, swearing in, and giving testimony to or against. That's protest to me. Why are we talking about protests going to district court and all that? I mean, if it's, obviously, if it doesn't pass and they want to do that, the person presenting can always take that distance, but protests are usually handled during the commission meeting.
Yeah, I think this is describing a different process than what you're describing, Vicky.
Is it really?
Yeah. So this protest, for example, I read the meeting minutes, there was a couple recommendations for denial for rezoning
Yeah.
last meeting. If
Yes.
20% of the property owners around the area come and say, no, we need to rezone, and the village council has already denied that rezone, this is describing that process. So
Okay, I'm
it's
sorry.
redundancy, if you will, or duplicative. The village council already voted, they're representing the people. It's not-
Right. Yeah. So Commissioner Williams, your question, people are already weighing in at planning commission. They're already weighing in at village council. Village council makes the decision. This would be an extra process that would say, hey, village council, can you make that decision again? Just
Okay.
removing them.
And I think what we have tried to do with some of these changes, and some of it was already fine in the code the way it was, is just make sure that you have clear criteria by which you're making your decisions, and that the record would state that. Because when somebody goes to district court, what the court is going to look at is, did you follow your process? And is the decision a logical decision based on the process and the criteria that you had to follow? So you can't protest a decision because you don't like that person,
Right.
or you just don't like the color red or whatever. You have to have a reason that's goes all the way back typically to your comprehensive plan and sort of the goals for the community. That's the basis of these decisions. And so
Thanks, Phyllis. Not
you
to cut
don't
you
want
off.
people to just be able to harass other people.
I think we're in agreement. Thank you.
I
Okay.
understand it now.
Let's
All right.
move-
So let's move on to the text amendment. Commissioner, exactly as you were saying, a lot of similarities with this. So 18 and 19, very similar to the previous part. So this is text amendments to the zoning code. This is what we're doing right now also. Particularly the purpose a little bit. Again, we incorporate and are kind of drafting a new criteria for decision making. So we put forward this incorporation. Again, a lot of some of the existing practices that are distributed elsewhere through the code, some of the best practices that other jurisdictions are doing and looking at state statutes. So we've got four criteria here for text amendment: substantial compliance with some of these larger plans, not having inconsistent land use, that it should be clarifying existing language or removing some of the understanding or inconsistency there, or promoting public health, safety, welfare of existing and future community residents. So I think this pretty comprehensively says, if this is something that's establishing long-term goals, if it's consistent, if it's fixing something, or if it's meeting the needs of the community, you can approve this. That's some of the basis for making some of the zoning code changes. Any questions with some of that new language for criteria?
No, that's pretty
Okay.
straightforward.
And this is going to be coming up, the criteria stuff. Commissioner Williams?
What's a planning code?
So the planning, where is that?
It's under 5, page 19, it's second sentence down. Village council may from time to time discuss and amend the planning code.
That should probably be this zoning code.
Yes, okay,
Yeah. Thank you for catching up.
sorry,
All good.
librarian.
Any other changes on 19? Commission? Okay.
No.
I got my question answered, so we're all good.
Okay. So that gets us through rezoning and text amendment.
Hey, should we clear that out?
Getting down
Yeah,
to
probably.
variances.
Yeah.
Carlos, we're gonna go ahead and vote on those if that's okay.
Perfect. Sounds great.
So I think we went 40 through 42.
Yes.
So we're gonna do, section 54-40,
41 and 42.
41, 42. If there are no comments, I would entertain a motion to approve those as changed.
I'll make a motion to approve sections 54-40, 41, and 42 as discussed.
A second?
I got a motion and a second. Let's go to a roll call vote.
Commissioner Baugh?
Aye.
Commissioner Byers?
Aye.
Commissioner Hall?
Aye.
Commissioner McLean?
Aye.
Commissioner Rigsby?
Aye.
Commissioner Williams?
Aye.
Motion carries.
We're working pretty hard down here. Can you, do a motion?
All right. So commissioners, the next section, variances. So variances, so again, revise the purpose, instead of talking about some of the general applicability stuff, talked about what the purpose of variances were. A lot of that's kind of rephrasing existing code. Separated out how variances are limited, to things like height, width, size, stuff like that. Use variances shall not be permitted, no change to that stuff. Criteria for decision. So again, new kind of relocated criteria here. There was criteria prior, but again, it's kind of mixed into some of the general applicability and how special circumstances apply. So we just wanted to make a list here, kind of rephrased a lot of those. Again, thinking about some of the state statutes, best practices and existing language. So we've got some of the stuff here about special circumstances that have to apply. It can't be contrary to public safety, health, or welfare. Can't cause material significant adverse impact, undermining intent and purposes of other stuff, or is the minimum necessary. So those are kind of standard language applied to Ruidoso a little bit on how to review variances.
So
Any questions or comments on
Yeah,
that
I guess
criteria?
comments or questions when you talk about materially contrary to public safety or significant material adverse, is that up to the council to determine that? The committee to determine that when, based on what's submitted for the variance, or?
Yeah,
is
it would
that
be
how
up to
it
us.
be up
So
to
we would
us?
interpret it. So if somebody says, hey, I want to build a 20-foot fence right along the road and they want to go into the setbacks, that would be dangerous, according to me, if we're going around a corner and you can't see oncoming traffic.
Okay, all right.
That was a poor example, but I hope it painted the point.
No, that's just, I was just trying to be ahead of Vicky there, because I knew she'd ask.
Any other comments?
I couldn't see, so I had to roll forward.
I think 20 is all good.
Yeah.
Okay. So going through that stuff, page 21, lots of red lines here. Again, I don't believe there's a lot of substantive changes. Commissioner Williams?
Vicky has her, yeah.
Is there a way to minimize the participants so we can see Vicky? Thanks.
Commissioner, you're muted too.
Yes, I am. On page 20, the very top, that first sentence that was a rewriting, that's one of the worst run-on sentences I've ever seen. By the time you get to the end, you don't know what's what. So you might want to go through and put a period here or there and a capital here or there and kind of clarify it. Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah, legal sentences are sometimes much more run-on than what I'd expect a librarian or other literary stuff is supposed to be. I'll see if I can. Again, sometimes when you separate sentences, it changes how meaning has to work. So sometimes you have to have that, from a legal language perspective, but I'll take a look at it regardless.
I did go through, and I think that if you put a period after article on the second line and a capital W, then on the third line, a period after improvements, take out or and make it a capital W. And you've corrected it and clarified it. I think, read it and see if you think that's right. But
Okay, let me take a look at that. What was that second separation there?
the second separation was on the third line after improvements, a period, and then no or, take or out and make a capital W when these.
Okay.
Is this direct from statute? Did you take that verbiage directly out of statute?
It could have been. Let me check this though.
That's
If it
what the
was, you
note
don't want
says
to change
next
it.
to it.
Yeah.
That attorney will pick that up in a heartbeat.
What's our attorney think?
Oh, Zach.
I think that's a fair
Yeah.
thing we should
We should
clarify.
have your full attention, Zach. We're important. Aren't we?
So I'm making a comment here. We'll check this before
Yeah.
it goes to council.
Okay.
Because, yeah, if it's, like you said, if it's statute, you don't want to change that language.
Right.
Yeah.
Council reviews. And
Yeah.
Excellent.
You'll pick that up.
Okay.
Any other comments on some of this? Again, once we start getting into process, a lot of red lines here. We got rid of the application procedures. Again, application is going to be part of administrative process. So things like saying the name and address of the applicant has to be on the application. We're getting rid of all that stuff and kind of just saying it's on a form completed by the planning administrator. We do call out a couple things that are kind of unique to variances. We do want some of the legal description, the present zoning document rationale, but for the most part, it's all going to be part of the administrative process. There's no comments on that. Skipping down to page 22. So again, we lay out that there's administrative review, not substantive, but this is just what happens already. Then we move to planning commission review, not really substantive. They're considering different kinds of oral and written statements from different individuals, can impose additional conditions, maintains the 2/3 approval for variances. That's up for debate. That is existing language, but the 2/3 approval for variances is what we have right now.
Yeah.
If there's no questions with that stuff, I'm going to move on to page 23.
Yeah, 23, perfect.
Perfect.
All right, so we got the blanket variance. This is kind of some confusing stuff. I didn't change any of it. I don't think we need to talk about it, but there are these blanket variances. Got rid of the variance agreement required stuff. That would be a process that would happen outside of code. Any questions with variances in total, or should we move on?
So if we don't have a variance agreement and it's handled outside of code, that would just be on approval of the building permits when variances are applied? Is that the thought process?
The technical variance agreement is where they sign their case study. They're also required to have the variance, the case number, and the date of approval noted on the map, on their plat when they come in for the building permit, showing that that has been approved as an encroachment.
As long as it's documented somewhere, that's all I care.
And all of that's in the variance case studies that show this has to be recorded on your plat.
Cool.
Okay, so that answers that question.
All right, so conditional use permit. So we're on a new section here, conditional use permit, section 44 right now. Again, kind of like the last ones, we created a purpose statement here, which is trying to just clarify some of the existing language. Created applicability. So conditional use permit is for generally for things that can get a conditional use permit. So other parts of the code talk about what those are. But there's a new section here that we work with staff on, also allowing legally non-conforming uses to go through the conditional use permit. So it's a way where instead of just being legally non-conforming and nothing ever changing, you could go through a conditional use permit to now become a conditionally approved use versus a legally non-conforming use. And so this would be for legally non-conforming uses which have been discontinued for a period of time, so they'd be able to come back as a conditional use. Any questions on some of that stuff?
I think it goes back to.
Why would you do that?
When we were talking about, when we were in Albuquerque, the firework factory that they kept talking about, TNT factory, where it was there before there were laws, and it might have been in part of a residential community, but it's been operating as a TNT factory for so long. They don't want to make it a conditional use permanently, but since it's been there for so long, they make it legally non-conforming. So I guess it's just for specific uses that have either been there for a while, or for a specific period of time.
So in other words, the community built to TNT where it's at,
Yeah.
and it was already there.
And there are sometimes, like in our commercial district, we have a lot of residential houses.
Right.
Those aren't allowed within the district, so when they call and ask for a zoning conforming document for a residential loan, we're unable to provide that, and then we have to tell them, well, it's a non-conforming use that's allowed to continue until it stops. So this would help provide them an opportunity to where we'd be able to give them a document showing, you've been approved to continue this use and it is recognized under the district, so it doesn't hold up the loan process.
Oh, okay.
That's a way better example.
Yeah, that's,
I-
okay, yeah.
Yeah, way better.
Thank you, Steph.
Listen to her, man.
Wow.
Now I understand why she got the cookies.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, we started chatting with staff about that, and I forgot the specific reason why, but I just remember like a light bulb going off and being like, "This is great. Yeah, we need to do this." So that's a new part. That is a new change.
And the uses are defined, we already did the use table, right? So where it says citation number, you're gonna incorporate that use table?
Right. So that'll be that new
Yeah,
citation.
we did
there.
that.
Yeah, we did all that.
Criteria for decision, again, trying to create a more distinct, kind of separate area, bulleted out. Here's the different criteria. So take a look at that. That's 24 and 25. Not a lot of substantive changes with that. We added has to comply with adopted long-range plans. That's kind of standard language, and then kind of simplified and revised how to think about significant adverse impacts. Of course, significant would be defined by the body reviewing it. But yeah, you'd be able to look on different aspects of what could be a significant adverse impact. All right, so moving farther down the process, lots of red lines on here. Again, I don't think a lot of these are substantive. Application gets submitted, it goes through the administrative review process. Planning Commission reviews this, uses the different approval criteria. The CUP, the conditional use permit, like variances, have to have a 2/3 affirmative vote by the reviewing body, not just a 50%. That might have been a change, but no, maybe that was already in there.
Well, that's consistent
Any-
with
Yeah, I think
everywhere
that
else.
was
Okay.
the reason why it was a change, is we got everything consistent, because some was back and
Sounds
forth
good.
Yeah.
between 2/3 to majority,
Yeah.
and it was really confusing, so now everything
Thing
says
is-
2/3.
Okay,
I
that
like
makes more sense.
And then the wait period for reapplication, it
Yeah.
says 6 months, but with the thing that we changed previously, isn't it 12 now? Is that what it-
Yeah. Where was that?
It was like the reapplication.
Oh, right. So
Part
this
E,
this would actually have a 6 months instead of the year, and so for the most part, it has the 1 year.
Why wouldn't we?
And so this
Why
would
wouldn't
be
we
6 months.
standardize it?
Why wouldn't we just standardize it at a year?
We absolutely can. We absolutely can.
I mean,
I
like-
think that was
Do it.
existing language, and so we wanted to keep the existing language of 6 months. But if we want to just keep that 1 year, this is also 6 months or rounds of new evidence, right? So we could just make that a year and say,
Or-
if
yeah,
you
or
get
rounds
new
of
evidence or some other kind of change of conditions comes up, maybe we will review it again. But yeah, it'd be more consistent to have it be a year.
Yep,
Yep.
Okay.
I think
Let's
everybody's
change
on
that.
board with that.
Yeah.
Do 1 year. Okay. I could probably actually just delete that. I'll see. Okay. Anything else here? Oh yeah, so this used to be. Oh yeah. It's still the 3/4, removing some of that redundant language. Any other questions or comments on CUPs? So we've done variances and CUPs, I think, since the last approval.
Okay. How's everybody doing? Do we want to vote on that? And then we're more than halfway through the recommended changes.
I think this would be a good time to vote, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
If there are no oppositions, I know that we are waiting on clarification on one section for the variance purpose. So I think we'll need to clarify that on 43. But we can vote on 43 and 44 if there's a motion. Something along the lines of approve pending language approval on the purpose of variances. I would entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to pass section 54-43-44 as discussed.
Second.
There we go. Thank you, Commissioner Byers. Stephanie, let's go to a roll call vote.
Commissioner Baugh,
Aye.
Commissioner Byers,
Aye.
Commissioner Hall,
Aye.
Commissioner McElina,
Aye.
Commissioner Rigsby,
Aye.
Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Excellent. Okay. How's the commission feeling? Do we need to take a few minutes and then come back?
Yeah, I could take 5.
Or do you want to push through?
Now let's push.
I'll make them, I need a break.
Easier.
All right, why don't, if it's okay with the folks on the call, why don't we take 5 minutes? It's 3:15 now, come back at 3:20. I think we can get through the rest of this content today if the commission is cool with it. Because this has been on our agenda for
Let's push. Yeah.
6 months, 9 months.
One time.
Yeah, let's.
So let's take a 5-minute break and come back.
Sounds good.
We have to get to this packet.
Yeah, but I mean, is there